Hi, today what we're going to be learning about is how to actually carve your plate. At this point you should have transferred your image. You'll notice I have this one here for reference, and definitely want to check to make sure my name, mod, and table number is on it. It's okay that it's sideways because I have my up arrow. Make sure you have your up arrow on the back. If not, please raise your hand and see me for a Sharpie. What we need to do is learn how to carve. And in your packet, you have a page that has a safety quiz and contract, which you will need to show me before you're allowed to carve. Every student was assigned a certain carving tool. They're all assigned a size 3 gouge. Gouges come in 3 sizes. This is a size 2. It's a small V-shaped gouge. And you'll notice it has blue marker and a letter after the size 2. This one is a size 5. It's a big U-shaped gouge. That is, and there's a letter next to that one, and it's in red marker. That way, if someone accidentally puts them in here, we can easily tell which one shouldn't be in there. To get a 5 or a 2, since they're not used as much, you'll ask me and I'll sign one out to you. Everyone in here was assigned a specific size 3 gouge. That number will be in your table's box. If you look, here's one table's box. And this, I was assigned a size 6. It's between 1 and 12, so it would be in this box. If you are a table gouge monitor, you'll make sure all 12 are in there, and then I will do the final count. If you are if you borrowed a size 2 or 5, you'll return it to me, and I'll cross your name off when you return them. Now, the next thing you'll also need to know, this is a size 3. This is what you'll use most, and that's why every single student was assigned one. You can also tell the size not only because this one has black marker, these have red and blue, but because it's printed on the back. If you look closely, it is printed on the back. This one says size 3, and here's a 5, and on the other one I'll have a 2. Now, the next thing you'll also need to always use is a bench hook, and these are located in the box from the room. The bench hooks are called that because they are designed to hook onto the workbench. You want it nice and tight. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. That's defeating the purpose. The whole point of a bench hook is so that if you slip when you're cutting, you hit the back of the wood, not your hand. These are very sharp. You do not want to accidentally hit. You don't want to cut towards yourself. You don't want to have, the most common problem kids have is put their other hand in the way. Please, please, please do not do that. If at all possible, keep your hand on the other one. That way it's definitely back. If not, then make sure it's still behind the blade. Now, the linoleum is hard this is a hard material. It's the same stuff our floor is made out of. So in order to make it easier to carve, you will need to iron it. There are several irons around the room. If you are hired as Iron Man or Iron Woman, your job is to make sure that at the end of the mod, the iron is in an upright position. You never want to leave an iron down like this because that's a fire hazard. And you want to make sure it's not facing out people. You want it to be standing upright in a way. You want it to be warm. This is not hot. I'm not going ouch, ouch, ouch. You won't want to burn yourself. And you be very careful because obviously the irons are hot, and you will want to keep it. Make sure it's always at a medium setting. It shouldn't be on a higher setting or on a lower setting. It should be at the medium setting. Now, I am a left-handed person. I don't want to have to accidentally carve, so I need to work over here. Now, notice I'm cutting perpendicular to the back of the bench hook. And with this size 3 gouge, here, I can easily cut just outlining every single shape. Now, I do not want to cut like this and have to reach over myself. So I would want to turn the plate. So the really important thing is you turn the plate, not your hand. You should always be cutting perpendicular to the back of the bench hook, not turning your hand, but turning your plate. So for a diagonal, I would want to still cut perpendicular to the back of the bench hook, making sure my other hand is out of the way, and that if I slip, I'm cutting perpendicular to the back. Now the first thing you'll need to do is with that size 3 gouge you're assigned is outline all of your shapes, whether it's going to be white shape, black shape, whether it's positive, negative. You would just simply outline all of your shapes. The next step that you will need to do, and here you can see I'm doing this, if it starts getting hard to carve, then you'll want to reheat your plate. Now notice I am having it as a V, or if you're using a 5, it's a U. It's not like a little carrot. It should be a V shape. I'm also not digging in, I'm not drilling into my plate. I'm just kind of skimming the surface. If it's hard to carve, then definitely heat up your plate, because if it's hard to carve and you start digging, that's when you'll slip and hurt yourself. Now, if you're cutting around a curve like this, you will want to cut, you still always want to cut perpendicular to the back of the bench hook. So you'll cut a little bit, turn your plate, little bit, turn your plate, little bit. Never get that other hand out of the way. Make sure it's always out of the way, not in front of the blade. But you'll just keep turning your plate, not your hand. Now, after you've outlined everything, whether it's going to be white or black shapes, you'll want to look at your design. You should have included some kind of hatching lines or concentric shapes or something in that. You'll notice these are hatching lines. How to do that? If they're bigger hatching lines like this, the size 3 gouge would be appropriate. And I'm still turning my plate, so I'm cutting perpendicular to the back of the bench hook. And if you need to simplify, maybe you have 12 lines. Well, maybe on this you only need 7 lines because it's too hard to carve. That's fine. It doesn't have to be exactly like your image. If it's really hard to carve, raise your hand and ask me for a size 2. So with the size 2 gouge, it's the same thing, but it's a little smaller. That way you won't have problems if you have really tiny areas. Now, once you've carved all of your outlines, whether white or black, positive or negative, and all of your hatching lines, then the next thing you want to carve is the white shapes. The white shapes are the negative spaces. Those are these parts in your plate that will not print because the ink will not stick to them. They are lower than the surface. So when I'm looking at this, I am going to be able to start carving those away. Now I want to outline this a little better so you can see it. And the reason you outline too is so that if you slip, it'll act as like a little stopping point. That way when you're using the big size 5 gouge, you don't accidentally go right into that black positive shape that you didn't want to carve out. Now that I've outlined around this, I can show you how to carve it out. With the size 5, and remember you'll ask me to borrow one, you can scoop it out. Now this is getting a little cool, so I'm just going to quickly heat it up again. This is the easiest starting in the world. You just leave it there for a second and then you're done. Now I'm using my size 5 gouge and I am just simply going straight across. I'm not digging super deep. I don't want to big a hole in it or have the burlap show or anything like that. It's okay that there's ridges. Just make sure it is lower than the surface. So it'll look like this. That would be a white shape when it's printed, whereas this will be a black shape because we're using black ink. And this would be an example of a finished plate. Now though, after you have finished, it's important to do a crayon rubbing. And I will quickly do a crayon rubbing of this plate so you can see it. This is how you do a crayon rubbing. You just take a piece of scrap paper and a crayon, and this is not being graded, the crayon rubbing, but it is something that I will check to make sure you've done because it is important to see if there's any parts of your plate that need to be touched up. In case you didn't carve something deep enough, in case your edges look messy, then you can easily see it without having a big mess to clean up with printing inks and all before you actually start printing. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, it looks pretty good. But if I saw like little spots like that, maybe I want to take that one little shape a little deeper, or maybe I need to touch up an edge. If you do need to touch up an edge, a size 3 gouge is good. A lot of times when you carve the white shapes, you're scooping like this, so that area and this area are higher, and sometimes it helps to just turn your plate and just touch up a little bit more so that it is in fact low enough and that your edges are nice and sharp. Now the last thing I need to show you is how to clean up. With the size 5s and size 2s, you'll simply raise your hand, I will cross your name off, and you will make sure we have the right amount of gouges. With the size 3 gouges, you'll return it, the gouge monitors will check. If you accidentally do cut yourself, please raise your hand and see me for a Band-Aid. Obviously, you always use safety precautions when dealing with blood, and I have gloves, we have all the materials you need, but do see me for Band-Aids. Now with this, it makes all these shavings. These shavings are not supposed to go up in the air, not in your hair, not on a chair, not down your neighbor's hood, nothing like that. Please don't get them all over the floor. You want to make sure that you're using them responsibly. Now I recommend using at the end of the month, cleaning up by using your plate as your broom, your bench hook as your dustpan. You can clean them all up just like this, and then you walk it over to the trash can, dump them in, and then return this to the box, return this to your table so that it stays together as a table, and then you're ready to go on to the next step. Thank you so much.